Hi, I'm Ali. I'm one of the physios from treatmyachilles.com. If you can hear me and if you can see me okay, please make sure that you comment at the bottom so we know that we're working. But what we're doing is today the fourth and final talk of our Facebook Live series. We've done 4 talks covering the treatment and prevention of Achilles tendinopathy. And yesterday we started talking about training errors. And today we're moving on and including a training error in that, which is looking at rest and recovery. So what we're going to talk about today is why is rest and recovery important, particularly when we're looking at an Achilles tendinopathy. When is the best time to put rest into our training program? And sleep is included in that, so why is sleep important? So yesterday we talked about how overuse injuries, one of which is the Achilles tendinopathy, up to 80% of those can be caused by training error. And we talked about how we need to train in our sweet spot. So that sweet spot, as a quick summary, is not where we're not doing anything at all in one end and we're not doing too much in the other. And we found this happy medium ground where we can run without risk of injury or without flaring up an injury and hitting all our targets. So what we're going to be doing is keeping performing and adapting to the load. So that means every time you go training, you adapt to the load and the stimulus that you would want to have so you get fitter and get stronger. So why that is important, if we put up the first slide, which is our supercompensation cycle, it shows you what happens when you exercise. So when you start to exercise and towards the end when you're feeling tired, your body goes through a cycle. And this cycle starts with something called micro damage. Now, damage sounds quite scary, but in this instance, it's something that we need, something that we want and really quite positive. So it's where our body starts to look at what we've just done. And in the example of an Achilles tendon, we're looking at collagen fibers. So how a tendon is lined up, it has collagen fibers all in nice long straight lines that look like lots of spaghetti held together, so dried spaghetti. And then you have another bundle of those and then another bundle and another bundle. So that all is encompassed in one tendon. So if we're then exercising and we're getting tired and we're putting a stimulus through that tendon, our collagen fibers get replenished by our body and waste products, which is the micro damage, gets flushed away. So this cycle is how we then adapt. So if we were to then rest adequately, we've now got a stronger tendon. So that means we can then go back out and we can run further or we could run faster, depending on what we've been training for. If we haven't got the right amount of time for that rest, that's when this cycle breaks down and we're more likely to then feel pains or symptoms or even develop one of our overuse injuries. So this is why we need rest and why rest is very important. So rest is something that needs to equal your activity. So if you're a 5K runner, you would need less rest than if you were a marathon runner, for example, depending on what training you've done. So we're looking at why we need that rest and how could we put that into our weekly schedule. So if you're looking at how you're running, quite traditionally runners would be thinking, let's go out every day, let's keep going out, let's go quite hard. And we talked yesterday about how, when we looked at our VIP acronym, so volume, intensity and plan, the intensity section, why we need to have 80% low intensity and 20% high. Now this also fits with our training and our rest. When we've got our weekly program and we're not training every day, we need to have rest days, particularly after a high load training day. So that high load training day is when we've gone out for like a longer mileage run, or it could be a high load activity day where you've done a bit of training, but then you've also done quite a lot on your feet or other exercise as well. So after that high load activity day, that day after is traditionally your rest day. So if you can look at your 7-day working week and have a look at what other things you've got on in your timetable, can you plan your longest run so you then can have a rest period afterwards? We also spoke about yesterday when we looked at the V section, the volume section of our VIP, about doing a 4-week cycle where we move up in a small percentage of each mileage each week. And on that 4th week, we have a consolidation week. And this has been taken from research to show that this is the best way we adapt and we are then better at performing afterwards. So, for example, in strength and conditioning work, you up your weight for the 3 weeks, and then in that 4th week, you consolidate, keep it all together, so then you are more likely to get that adaptation, get your muscles stronger, so then you can lift more. And it's the same for running. If we then can keep progressing our mileage, we're going to get our hearts and lungs fitter. We're going to get all of the things that contract when we're working and moving, including muscles and tendons, and also our bones nice and stronger. So then we're less likely to get injuries and problems. So with something to remember as our take-home message from this is, can you fit your rest day, particularly after a high-load day, and after your 3 weeks of gradually increasing your program, can you make your 4th week a more restful week, i.e. taper it down a little bit? And this is why we might naturally see in a running program building up for a larger event like a half marathon, marathon or further, that there is a natural tapering prior to that event. And there is also more likely to be a rest period after that event before you then regain training again. So one of the best ways of resting, well, really it is just doing that. It's not really doing very much at all, and it is resting. And this also includes sleep. But there are lots of things out there telling you that you can buy these compression garments or these gadgets, or you could use ice baths or things like that to try and help with your rest. But actually, if we look at the evidence base, it's a little bit non-substantial. So it gives us some information, but it doesn't answer all our questions. So it's a bit inconclusive about whether any of these things particularly work. So I wouldn't worry about going out and buying things if you haven't got them at home. And equally with ice baths, there's been some evidence that show it could be a little bit more detrimental because it can slow down that micro damage cycle or that supercompensation cycle that we talked about after. So things to think about is literally just rest and the sleep, which we're going to come on to. And then a final point, which you would need to speak to a nutritionist or a dietitian about for more information, but getting adequate nutrition for whatever calories you've burnt that day. So sleep. Sleep is really important. It's something in the research where it's saying that normal, healthy adults should be sleeping between 7 to 9 hours a night. And there was a study of a large group of cohorts which showed that people that were getting less than 7 hours of sleep at night were 1.7 times more likely to get injuries. So we know that sleep is important, but we don't really know what happens in our body when we sleep. But we certainly know from lots and lots of different research papers what happens if we have sleep deprivation, if we have too little sleep. And if you look at all of this wealth of information, it can affect us in many ways, which is why we know that sleep deprivation is a really good torture tactic. If you ask anybody that's just had a baby, they'll be able to agree with you. So it's looking at things along the lines of increasing susceptibility to stresses, having less coping strategies, lowering mood. And then if we look more physically, it can be things along the lines of not allowing that compensation cycle to happen. So there was a study looking at army personnel, and people that had less than certain hours of sleep at night were more likely to develop shin splints or stress fractures in their shins, or any of the umbrella terms that fit under that, because they had less bone density. They weren't able to go through that compensation cycle to make their bones as strong as they needed for the activity they did. This has been shown the same in muscles, and I would therefore assume that this is the same in tendons. If you are looking at performance, this is why elite athletes tell you that they might go to sleep for 12 hours after they've done an event, or go to bed early the night before an event, because again, it has a massive effect on performance. So if you want to train smarter and hit your targets and get fitter and get stronger, sleep and rest are incredibly, incredibly important. So one of the best ways of changing your sleep to help with your recovery is to try and plan your bedtime routine after you've done your longer run. So again, we've got a nice longer run and we're thinking about the next day being a rest day, but could you try and start by decreasing your bedtime? So your bedtime comes about half an hour or so a little bit earlier. And if that's possible, you look in your diary and find a day where that could work for you. So you've elongated your sleep by a short period of time. If you can't do it at the beginning of the night, could you do it at the end of the night? So you might be able to sleep for that half an hour or so longer in the morning. And it's this sleep elongation that's got the best evidence base for helping with all of these things we've been talking about. So if that's not possible, a different way of sleep elongating might be taking a nap. Well, this might suit some people that have got more freedom and flexibility in their diaries. It may not suit the teacher in front of their class of children or people sitting at offices falling asleep on their desks. But these are ideas, and it's fitting in the ones that suit best for you. And the evidence base on the nap should be that the nap would be directly in the middle of your waking day. So if you looked at your hours when you're awake, it's in that middle section. But actually, it should be no longer or no later than that mid-afternoon time. And the ideal amount of time for a nap is about 15 to 30 minutes. And a good way of trying to ensure that you wake refreshed from that nap one of the suggestions in the literature is to have a caffeinated drink before falling asleep so that you then wake up after that half an hour. There's also been some interesting thoughts on whether you actually need to fall asleep at this time, because just doing a time where you are switching off from everything, eyes shut and focusing on something like breathing or following a relaxation technique or doing a meditation, it could be guided or otherwise, you're also resting and you're also having some of these benefits that your body will receive. So if you can't nap and it's impossible to fit in, can you find a quiet place at work or go and sit in your car and find those 20 minutes that you could do doing a 20-30 minutes of relaxation or breathing techniques? So our main thing to take home is, can you elongate your sleep, and can you elongate that at a time that you've done the most activity? If we then go back to this normal healthy adult having 7 to 9 hours sleep a night, how can we help that? How can we make this happen for us? And again, one of the best take-home messages here would be to try and get into a regular sleep routine, so that most nights you tend to go to sleep around about the same time, and most mornings you wake up about the same sort of time. So we're looking at then getting our body into a rhythm, and so we're quite regular, and we know then when we're going to go to sleep and when we're going to wake up, and this then promotes having better sleep over a period of time. If you were to have a weekend or a day off where you then might think, oh, I'll have a lie-in here, again, the evidence is saying, could you get up within an hour later than your normal wake-up time? And that then means your body is still ready to go to sleep about the same time that you would normally do, so you stay within that regular rhythm. So it's regular bedtimes, regular up times, and waking up within that hour. There are some other points to think about, and some of those is then actually about the environment that we're in when we go to sleep. One of the things that's quite interesting is that your bedroom is shown to be better or prepared for sleep if your bedroom is less than 18 degrees, which is actually relatively chilly. So if you can you open windows? Can you turn on fans? Can you change your bedding? Can you change what you're wearing to keep it nice and cool? Because this promotes better sleep. If you're able to, can you make your bedroom quite dark? Can you make it quite quiet? And if this is impossible, or you're a shift worker where you've got to sleep in the day, can you use earplugs? Can you use an eye mask to try and help promote this? If we then look at what we're doing prior to sleep, it's a good idea not to take stimulants, so nicotine, caffeine, or alcohol directly before falling asleep. Again, this can also change if we've eaten quite a lot just before falling asleep, because it changes our blood sugar and our rhythm, and we then might wake up during the evening. Have a think about what you're doing. So are you reading in bed? Are you eating in bed? Are you watching telly in bed? And the idea is to try and keep your bed a safe zone for sleep, and therefore you would want to take those activities outside of the bedroom. And if you are reading or looking at things, that's fabulous to switch off and calm down afterwards. But using things with blue light, like your tablets or phones, have also been shown to have a negative effect on sleep. And one study I was reading about, but it had a very small cohort, which means a small amount of people that they were studying, they showed that they had up to a 22% drop in melatonin if they used a blue light before bed. And that melatonin is the hormone in your body, or the chemical in your body, that likes to promote that sleep inside. So it's thinking about less blue light, particularly in that hour or so before bed. If you find it difficult to drop off, or you wake up in the middle of the night and find it more difficult to go to sleep, can you use apps? Can you use different relaxation or meditation things again? And some of the apps available or things on YouTube might be sleep stories or other things that you can do for breathing exercises. So we have our summaries. Our summaries show we need rest to adapt. How are you there? To our training and become stronger and fitter. So we need that super compensation cycle to happen to allow us to get stronger and fitter. And if it doesn't happen, that's when we're more likely to have injuries and pain. And our second page is plan your rest days the day after your high load or high activity day. If you can plan your rest day, then maybe you could play around with your sleep on that day as well. Can you lengthen that sleep by going to bed a little bit earlier or staying in bed a little bit later? And can you nap or relax in the middle of the day? Can you follow any of the sleep hygiene tips that we've just talked through? And the basic one to remember, if you can't remember any of them, is trying to get a regular bedtime and a regular up time. I think that's everything we've covered for today. I don't know if there's any questions at all.
Yes, there is actually. But first of all, I want to say that my dad would actually be very happy to hear about the nap thing in the middle of the day, because I can remember from being a child already, he always sleeps for 20 minutes after lunch. And you're dead if you wake him, and then he's a nice person again.
So he's nailed that then. He's ahead of the curve.
Okay, so Suzanne's asked, how much does calf strength or foot placement in running influence Achilles pain?
Okay, so I guess if you wanted to have a look back over some of the talks we've already done, they might be able to give you a bit more information, because I know Marek and Noel have spoken about some of this in your previous talks. But your calf strength is one of the main important parts when you look at running performance and running injury. And there's a set of research showing how many calf raises a normal healthy adult without an Achilles tendinopathy should be able to do. And if you wanted to have a try, what you could do is set yourself so you're doing 2 seconds on the way up on a calf raise and 2 seconds on the way back down on one leg, and without having an Achilles tendinopathy, and see how many you can do. And if you can get to somewhere around a ballpark of 25, it varies with different ages, then you know you've probably got all right enough calf strength to be able to cope with this amount. So that certainly does make a difference. Foot placement, I think there's not too much evidence to show what is the best foot placement or what is not the best foot placement, and therefore it is what is comfortable to you and what you would naturally normally do, and I wouldn't run out and change it. If you need more information on that, I would have a look at speaking to
There's that, I think I should know really. I think I wrote a blog a couple of weeks back about running style for Achilles tendinopathies and things. And there aren't any recommendations of how you can place your foot better to offload your Achilles. But there's definitely that if you take up a 4-foot strike, then that can put more strain on the Achilles. If you build up to it slowly and you strengthen your calves, you can absolutely do a 4-foot strike running style. But if you're having trouble with it, I would say probably go towards a bit of a midfoot. But like Ali said, we all have our own biomechanics, so it's about what's comfortable for you. So if you're struggling with Achilles tendinopathy, I would first get the tendinopathy under control with strength training. And once that's there, then see if running is an issue. But usually if people go back to their running at a nice steady pace, slowly increasing it, they don't have to change anything with running style. Okay, so that was the one question we had for tonight. Anything else before we go, Ali?
Other than just to say, everything is on our Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel if you would like to have a look, Treat My Achilles. And if you wanted to look any more information, we've got blogs on all of the topics we've spoken about, which is on our website, which is on the link. Is it on the link?
It's going to be on the link in a minute.
It'll be on the link.
If you give me 2 minutes, it'll be in the description of the video.
There's ways of booking or contacting us if you've got any questions online as well.
Excellent. All right. Have a good evening, guys.
Yeah. Goodbye.